Today's video, we are going to go ahead and we're going to do an overview of training. So stick around, it's going to be a longer video. Thanks for tuning in. Alright, so I did the poll in the community. I just got back from vacation. I only got 2 votes on it, but we're going to go ahead and do this video. I got to jump back in and get back to it. So today's video, we're going to talk about the overview. Okay, so it's kind of be the Coonhound training vids and one overview video. So let's go ahead and let's just start right from the beginning here. Alright, so obviously I have the how to pick a puppy video. You guys have picked a pup, you have a pup, or you're going to pick a pup. If you need help doing that, check that video out. Alright, so once we've picked the pup, this is how we're going to kind of play this. Now, we have pups. Usually when I get a pup that is, a little pup, 6 weeks old, they stay in the house. Alright, I don't tend to keep puppies outside until they are at least 3 months old. Or if it's summertime, they can go out a little bit earlier. Now, there's a lot of guys that keep pups outside. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with it at all. I myself, personal preference, at least until they get a couple rounds of shots in them, I'm not putting them outside permanently. All right, but during this time, okay, so we're going to talk about the pre-3 month stage here, and what we're trying to get and understand out of our puppy, okay? So keeping them in the house, number one, it lets us get to know our puppy's personality. We're not going to know that dog so well, but we're going to know what kind of things will set this dog off, what kind of things make this dog tick, right? We have different dogs that tick for different reasons. Maybe he ticks a little bit more when he smells stuff. Maybe he ticks a little bit more when he sees stuff. Maybe he's more apt to bark. Maybe he's more apt to be quiet. These are all the things that we're going to look for in this pre-3 month old stage. Now, during this time, we need to be imprinting. Okay, so imprinting, associating the scent with the food, giving them the coon tail or the coon scent while they're in their sleeping, in their pen sleeping, whatever the case may be. The way that I prefer to do this is I prefer to use this as their toy. Okay, so puppies obviously need a rough house. Puppies obviously need this as part of their development, and if they were left with their litter mates, they would be roughhousing, they would be playing. So I get the toy and I get the scent on a toy and we roughhouse and we play with this toy with the puppy. And the more aggressive, now aggressive, not like violently aggressive, the more drive that this puppy has for the toy. This is what we're looking for. I think aggressive is maybe the wrong word, and I've used that word quite a lot, but some people understand what I mean by that, other people don't. Dogs shouldn't be showing aggression, but it should have a nice drive, and it should have a lot of vigor, and it should have a lot of viciousness when it comes down to this toy. So we're doing the tug of war thing, we're doing the play thing, we're doing all of the stuff, right? The normal puppy behavior stuff, we're doing it all. And this is where we can get a really good idea of where the drive level is on our puppy. And some puppies are just like, oh, ha ha, I want to chew on it a little bit. Other puppies, they want to shake it, they want to tear it up, they want to shred it. We want the puppy to be the second kind. This is what we want the puppy to get to. When we're roughhousing, when we're playing it, we want the growling, we want them chasing it full sprint, we want them snapping at it, we want them fully engaged and locked in on this. And this is a pre-3 month old stage. And once I have gotten that from the puppy, now this is one thing that I want to stress to you guys, is because I had a couple comments and I keep getting these kind of comments to where it's like, that can turn into something that you don't want. This is absolutely correct, okay? But we need to have some way to gauge the behavior of the puppy, engage the puppy. So doing this tug of war thing, number one, it will build a drive, it will scent associate this behavior with this scent. It will also give you a good inkling on how much work that this dog needs, and it's only for a brief period of time in the puppy stage. So when we are doing this, and we see this, once we get them to a point to where when they see the toy, they're turned on, okay? They're like, oh, it's time to go. It's time to chase that thing. It's time to get busy. It's time to get active. When they see it, this is when we want to cut it off, right? So once they get to this point to where they see this thing and they're ready to go, then we shut it down. Then we're not going to do the tug of war thing anymore. And this would be what I call a one and done process, right, in the training. it's one and done, because once we have accomplished it the way that we want it to be accomplished, then we no longer need this. And that is what I talk about a lot. Getting what we want to see out of the dog, getting what we need out of the dog, and then moving on, right? And it forces us to move forward. All right, so that is this part minus 3 months, right? So when we get up into closer to the 3-month-old mark, maybe 2.5, 2-month-old mark, this is what we're going to kind of want to start doing. We're going to start maybe laying a drag for the dog and see what it's going to do. Now, I'm a huge proprietor of getting the barks before. Okay, there's nothing wrong with running drags for a dog that isn't barking at it yet, but if we do it too long while they're not barking, we'll never get it washed out to get a consistent good bark when they're doing this. So maybe run a drag for the dog as a pup and let it go and see if it's going to do it, right? We're just going to gauge. This is just all taking a meter and going, he needs this much, he needs this much. He is this far ahead, he is this far behind at this point in time. And he is advanced, he is not advanced, right? So we run a drag for the dog will run out there and it'll get on the tree, maybe smell around. Puppies, sometimes they bark, sometimes they don't bark, right? When they're under this age, maybe they'll bark for it, maybe they won't bark for it. Ways that we can get them to go ahead and bark for that is make them bark for their food. Make them bark after the toy when we're roughhousing. The sooner that we can get them barking, the better off we'll be throughout our entire career with this dog. Is the sooner that they will bark at what you want them to bark at, the better off you will be. Because some dogs will be extremely mouthy, but they will not bark at what you want them to bark at. This is what we're looking for. We want them to bark at what we want them to bark at when we want them to bark at it. So running a drag, this is what we're establishing. We're establishing the dog can actually use its nose to get to the tree. We are establishing that the dog will actually stay at the tree and the dog will stay engaged with whatever's in that tree and bark at that tree long enough for us to get there. Now, I'm going to skip a little bit ahead here and just put this little cliff note here. When we're running drags, when we're waiting on trees, when we're doing all this stuff, in the beginning, okay, so in the beginning, first handful of trees, first handful of training exercises, first handful, 10 or less, okay, 10 or less of these, we are going to be on the heels of the dog. We are going to be within eye shot of the dog. We are going to pay attention to every move that dog makes. And once we get to a level to where we have watched the dog physically perform exactly what we want and we know what the dog is going to do from this point on, oh, he's done it this way 4 or 5 times, I'm confident I can stay back, let him go do his business. And when we start peeling ourselves out of our drags, out of our hunting sessions, out of our woods times, let them do what they're going to do, what you've trained them to do. And this is a big thing. All right, so I'll put that little cliff note on that. So the barking is typically what comes next. And the barking, I put the barking exercises right around the 3-month-old mark. Okay, you can get dead coon barks, you can get cage coon barks, you can get drag barks, and you can get a lot of good barks out of a puppy that is around 3 months old. And I have that in the how to start or what age to start a pup video. I'll try to link as many of these in the description as I can. But the purpose of this video is to try to condense all these and streamline it even more for you guys. So right around this 3-month-old mark is when we're going to get the dog that is checked that little mark, right? It has checked that little mark in a growth. So it's going to be a little bit more aggressive. It's going to be a little bit more, have a lot more spunk to it. It's going to have a lot more confidence to it. And it's still going to be immature enough to be malleable enough to work it without having issues. So showing cages, definitely a good time. If you have a pup that is showing you things that you like and it is not like a shy, timid, scared pup, this would be a good time to try to see what it will do with the cage. Try to see what it'll do with the dead coon and run your drags. Okay, so I have the whole drag video in depth, and that is a lot of drags, okay? That drag video really kind of needs to be applied with a cage. It needs to be applied with a cage because we can do these with the dead coon and with the scent and with the drag, but we're never going to get the best results the best results that we can without having the cage. Okay, out of a drag. Yes, a dog will run a drag. Yes, a dog will tree a dead one. It will tree a drag. It will tree a scent. Tree a scent. But when we have the cage there to constantly bring it down and reinforce and drive it home, the cage video or the cage video and the drag video, those need to be worked together. Okay, so the cages go with the drags. This is where we're going to do the most drag work with our dog is with a cage. Okay, outside of that, we're going to run a drag for the dog. If it makes it a tree, okay, we know you can do that. We'll try him again on a drag. Okay, this time he barked. Okay, maybe it's just a one bark, maybe it's just two bark. We're going to save and bank that good note to reinforce it with the cage later with the drags. Okay, he runs a drag, he'll bark at it a little bit. I know once I get the fire in him from the cage, he's going to turn on. So we need to be clicking and mentally note checking all of these milestones. He barked now, he barked here, he's barking this much, he's barking that much, he's barking with this level of intensity, he's not barking with intensity at all. Okay, so when we get into, and I would say this is a 3-month on stage, maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe about 4, 5, 6 drags for them. Okay, so if they are not going to perform, if they are not doing so well, they're not paying attention so much, what I would like to do is I would like to go out and I would like to shine one and get it knocked down for them. And then maybe next time I go out and try training, they look a lot better. Then we can take them back out, maybe shine one, see if they'll treat on their own. And we kind of just mix this mixture of, okay, we're doing tree work, okay, we're doing we'll do a drag. I took him in the woods and I seen zilch. He did the same exact thing as last time I had him out, even though I had this training session. Okay, so we know that we missed a gap in there somewhere. We need to figure out what that gap is, and then we need to go back and train that and bring them back out. And what you will see is a lot of times when a dog can click a process, especially in these young puppy stages, 3, 4, 5, 6 months old, when they click a process in training, you will see it on them in the woods immediately. They will go a little bit deeper that time. Maybe they will be way more alert. They'll be like, okay, I'm really into it this time. They will be a lot more speed on them. You will see the effects of your training immediately within a session or two in the woods. And this is why when we're going through all of these training processes, we need to couple it with woods time. And why we're coupling it with woods time is we have a dog that's going in the woods and it's learning the woods. It's learning how to get off away from you. And a lot of guys can skip this. So I had a comment in the Facebook. A lot of guys can skip this by free roaming your dogs. Okay, if you have the property, if you're set up well enough to where you have the space to let your dog run and let your pups be out in the woods, go for it. Okay, go for it. There is a particular point in time, and I'll reference a podcast. I believe it was a Stark podcast. They're talking about once they start in trying to tree, once they start in barking, that's time to pin them up because we don't want to prevent them from getting into the trash. Okay, so this is another little subject that we can cliff note right here in this woods time stuff. When we're in the woods time and the dog doesn't really understand much, it's not going to be actively doing much, it's not going to be actively striking, it's not going to be actively treeing much, we kind of can use this time. If we have a deer pop up on us and the dog goes ahead and go, no, do not engage, and we can kind of break them off, a couple here or a couple there, let them know, like, don't do this, don't do that. And we're kind of doing this in the woods time the whole entire time and coupling it with the training days. Okay, so I have a dog in the woods. Okay, I put a day of drags on him. I took him in the woods. Now he's going this far. Now he's not coming back for this long. Now he's not doing this for this much. Okay, so I keep him in the woods and he's doing this. Okay, so now I do tree work on him. Okay, now he's out here, he's checking a couple trees. Maybe he checked 1 tree this time, he checked 3 next time, or he hasn't checked any trees, and I did the tree work, now he's checking trees. We need to kind of mix and mince all this stuff together and get this information process to go ahead and go, when I take him home, if I do need another day of training on him, then I need to go ahead and move forward. But like again, the one and done processes, drags are going to be one and done processes, right? Because when we get the dog to do exactly what we want, and we have accomplished a very good praise and a very solid thing, you've been taught, okay? And we don't want to mess that up. We don't want to continue to do this and cause the dog to fray, right? Because that's what they'll do. Okay, why are we doing this again? Did I do it wrong? Let me do it a little bit different and see if he still praises me. And this is when we get into the holding praises, only praise him when we get what we want out of the dog. Because if we're really lackadaisy and just really quick to praise the dog, it's super easy to miscommunicate what we want. Now, when we're talking about training dogs, okay, the idea of training a dog to do something is I say this, you do that, then you get rewarded, right? So this is the process. This is the process that goes around. This is the circle of life, right? I tell you, you do this, I give you that. This is how it goes. Now, when we're talking about coon hunting and we're talking about training coon hunting dogs, where in your mind and where in that dog's mind and where in the world are you ever going to just walk outside and go, tree that, okay, do every single step that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to bark at it while you're running it. You're supposed to use your nose to figure out where it went. You don't know where it's at. You have to find which tree it went up into. You have to be confident that it's in that tree. Then you have to bark at that tree and stay at that tree while I walk into you. Stay on the tree while I look for it. Stay on the tree and keep on barking, keep on barking, keep on barking. There is 1,700 different things that the dog has to do correctly to get praised before the circle is complete. Now we can cliff note, and one thing that I suggest doing here is little praises, right? We can praise little, and then we save the big praise for when the process happens. And we can inch our dog up by praise a little here, praise a little here, little praise here. They make a big milestone, make a bigger deal about it. They make a bigger milestone, make a bigger deal about it. And then the dog will kind of understand, oh, well, I don't want these little praises. I want this big praise. So it has something that it itself can jump from point A to point B. All right, so let's get back into talking about the drag stuff being one and done stuff. Like I said, when we get what we want out of the dog, it's time to stop, right? And what we'd want out of the dog is us to run a drag in the woods, circle out, cut the dog, and the dog stay at the tree. This is the gist of it, right? This is and not being able to be seen in a tree. So this is what we want for the drag. This is the ultimate thing. And the second hand of this is going to be the surprise drag, which is going to be kind of like a cold start, right? And I've talked about cold starts on the channel before, and that is where we just lay our dog up for a week or so until you can kind of tell, oh, it's kind of wore out of him. He ain't so ready to go right now. Let's go grab him when he's not ready to go and see if he'll work. And this is a cold starting, right? And we can cold start and surprise drag them. And surprise drag is another thing. They cannot know that it's coming. They cannot know anything about it. It needs to be just another trip to the woods, like a woods time thing, but then all of a sudden there's a drag there, right? We need to do this. And then when we're working the cages and we're working the drags, right, we can do these in two different kinds of ways. We can do them by warming the dog up first, right, and not cold starting it. Cold starting it would be it doesn't have any kind of idea. Warming it up would mean that we've leashed it up, we've got it rolling, it's barking at it, and then we run the drag, and then we know kind of what it's going to do. Taking the offhand of that and saying we don't know what he's going to do if he's cold started and running him in the woods and see what he does when he's cold is another good way to judge and another good way to have an inkling on this. Now, woods time always has to be there. Always has to be there adjacent to your trainings. Because even though woods time is training, but our training sessions, and that's another thing that needs to kind of be broke down here, is we have training sessions in the yard, we have training in the woods, and we have hunting in the woods, right? We have all these levels of these things. And on the side of all the hunting, we have the handling, we have the command work, we have all these things that we need to do right. And if we can kind of take all this stuff and funnel it and get it on a streamlined process for the dog will go right along with you and it will meet you every step of the way. Especially if we're doing these things correctly, we're praising correctly, we're getting it in the woods adjacent to its training, and we're realizing that, he didn't really quite get this one. We can do this one more time. And this is a big, huge tip that I'm going to put right in here. And I kind of haven't said this a whole lot. I have said it a couple times on the channel throughout whatever videos, is laying our dog up, okay? Especially if we're going to work it from this young puppy all the way up, right? So laying the dog up in between training sessions, laying the dog up. Now we can lay a dog up and not train on it, but still get it in the woods. Or we will lay it up from woods time and from training, right? So if we take the dog, we put it in the woods and we're going, he's not kind of ready yet. He's still sticking around. I'm training on him at the house and it's not clicking for him. It's not, the training isn't clicking back, and I've put him up for a day or two and tried the training again and took him back in the woods and it's not clicking. So we're going to take the dog and we're just going to put him away. We're going to put him away for a good week, a good 2 weeks, something like that. I wouldn't say 2 weeks if we're really wanting to rush the thing, right? So put him up for a week, bring him back out, take him straight to the woods, see what he does, bring him back to the house, put him up for 3 or 4 days, try a training session, take him back to the woods the very next day, see what he does then, and then we just kind of do that thing again. Okay, so this time I put him up for a week. I took him to the woods, made sure that he was still doing the last stuff before I did another training session. Then I waited a day or two, did a training session on him, took him straight in the woods and see him if it was different from when I just brought him out from being laid up. And then also what we're doing here when we're laying the dog up is we're bridging this gap of age. We're bridging this gap of maturity. We're bridging the gap between everything that needs to be bridged, right? Because maybe the dog is here, it's doing this in the woods, and it's here in the training, it's doing this in the training, but it's not going forward because it needs like a month more of age. And then we get it to that month more of age and try it again, and it's doing a lot better. And if we can kind of fold this hand over hand and reverse it hand over hand and kind of interlace this with the woods time and the age and the training, and we bring it together, what's going to happen is if we're persistent and we stay on our stuff and we stay up on our paying attention to what our dog's doing and what stage our dog's at and where we're heading with our dog and what stage we're working towards, what will happen is as soon as that dog is age appropriate, all right, so say the age is what's preventing this dog from performing. As soon as that dog hits that age, we're right on it, training, and then it's peeled right on to the next one. And what we'll do is we'll do age, training, and they'll go just like this. And what will happen is that dog will, when it's ready, okay, so when it's ready, when its age says it's ready, it's not missing nothing, right? So then it's just, it's straight on. The dog gets out there. When it finally says, okay, I'm going to run 600 yards over here and tree something, it's going to know what it's doing. It's going to know how it's doing it. It's going to know you. It's going to know your commands. It's going to know everything. And it's going to get out there and it's going to go do its job, right? And we're going to have less issues. We're going to have less issues. And along these woods times, maybe this dog hasn't treed yet, but maybe it's out here and it's ran good tracks, and it's figured it out already. This way's hot, this way's cold. Because this is another issue that happens, is they'll run the tracks backwards and run the tracks forward. And this is why I say when we put them in the woods, wait on them. If they're going to run a track, wait on them. Just wait on them. Because Cashman, for instance, I waited on him for 5 hours. I waited on him for 5 hours in the woods. He picked up a track and he ran it. But what he did is he ran it from one tree, 350 yards, to a different tree. And then he backtracked it to the same tree. And then he backtracked to the same tree. And he backtracked to the same tree. And he backtracked to the same tree. And I just sat there. And you can pick one. Just pick a tree. And then we'll come in there and we'll get it sorted out. 5 hours of this. One tree to the other. Wouldn't tree up, but one tree to the other. One tree to the other. Slowed way down on me. Half a mile an hour. One tree to the other. 45 minutes to make it 350 yards. He ran the track so much that he was tired of it. He was tired of it. I was tired of it. When I took him back in the woods, I didn't see that anymore. because when I laid him up after that for 3 or 4 days, that's all he did is sat there and he thought about that. Why? What was going on? When I ran it this way, what was that? When I ran it this way, what was that? And they kind of solve their own issues and they solve their own problems by being laid up sometimes. So being laid up is a good thing. And being laid up on a dog, a lot of these dogs, they will be hyper focused, right? They're hyper focused on the job at task, and they will sit and they will mull things over in their head, right? They will play things over in their head, and you know that they do. You know that they do, because I've had dogs that I've took in the woods and I've did training, right? Drags. Okay, so I've done drags for a dog, took it in the woods, ran drag, ran drag, ran drag, ran drag, ran drags like 6 back to back, right? One right after the other. Run a drag, you treat it, bring it down, work them, run another drag right off that tree, treat it, bring it down, work them, put them, leash them back, run another drag, run another drag, run another drag. And we have like 6 drags or 5, 6 drags. And then at the end of the night, cut the coon out for them and run it, and I'll let them run it and treat it and knock it down. A month later, I bring the dog back to the woods. First thing he does is go check the tree that I shot the coon out of. Ain't nothing there. Walking him through the woods. Next thing he did is went and checked the first tree that I put a drag in. Get a little bit deeper. Went right back to the same tree. They remember stuff, right? They remember stuff, and when we get this, bam, when we get this shock factor in them, where it's like, oh, I'm getting lots of praise, I'm getting lots of action, I'm getting lots of adrenaline, I'm getting all this stuff, it really drives it home for them. It really pounds it in their head, and they will remember, right? That's the whole point, is remember what we're doing. And that's when we couple that's when we need to couple the bigger praises for the better stuff. Big praises for big deals, right? Oh, it's the first coon you treat. We're going to pet you up. We're going to make it the best time of your life. You are never going to forget this tree, right? You're never going to forget this tree. You're never going to forget how it started. You're never going to forget the middle of it. You're never going to forget the treeing up of it, the coming down of the coon. You're never going to forget packing it out of the woods. You're never going to forget this process. And when they never forget that process, then they will go and they'll seek that process over and over and over again. And that's kind of the gist of it. Now, a lot of this stuff, and I've talked about this too, let's get into this a little bit. I've talked about skipping over processes. All right, so you can skip over processes. If you have a dog that you just go, I know that you have the grit, you have the fire in your belly, you have the go, you have the drive, we can skip, right? We can skip. We don't need not waste time. Need not waste time on certain things. Now, if I have a dog that all I see out of that dog every single solitary day, its nose is just plain blank buried in the ground 24/7. It's always pushing track. Always pushing track around the house. It's always smelling. I know you're going to run a track. I don't need to run a drag for you right too many times. Maybe once just to check you before we move on to the big stuff, maybe with the cage work. We don't need to run them drags when they're younger. We can wait for the cage work to come around, right? So we need to be paying attention to our dog and our dog's behavior. And that's why I talk about in the beginning of this video, having them in the house and being around them and working them and stuff. We can see what drives these dogs. Now, if we have a dog that just walking around his head up in the air all the time and ain't never put his nose on the ground, yeah, you probably want to run some drags for that dog, because doofus there doesn't even know how to put his nose on the ground yet. So we need to do this. And some dogs, you know what they do is they won't start putting their nose on the ground until they're a little bit older. They won't start doing things until they're older. You won't see stuff out of them until they're older. And that's when we get into the laying up. So everything works hand in hand. And at the end of the process, we spit out a dog that is pretty well formed and pretty well ready to just do a job. And pretty well ready to do a job the way that we want the dog to do the job. Now, we can get into talking about furthering them on after that. But I think the biggest hurdle comes here is in the beginning part, right? If we start a dog off on the wrong foot, it's going to be on the wrong foot for the rest of its career. If we start a dog off in a funny way, it's going to be a funny dog for the rest of its career. And we need to be starting these dogs in a healthy, correct way, good associations. because what can happen here too is we cause dogs to not go, right? Everybody's who's got a hold of a dog, and we've seen it. We've seen it out there. Now, some of you guys that are new to the sport, this is a thing, man. This is a thing. You will see dogs that are ruined, right? That's what you call them. They're ruined. They're ruined. They won't run no more. They don't run well. They always want to do something off. It's because they have been kind of averted off of training appropriately, averted away from hunting right. I think every dog, if put together well in the beginning, will go a long way, and it will excel at what it does. Now, what level that dog does, that is just kind of dependent on the dog. But I think every hound out there, a lot of dogs out there, will absolutely, without a doubt, have the capacity to go and tree coons. A lot of the things is we just get a hold of these dogs, and you can kind of look at them and be like, what is going on in your head, right? They're so scatterbrained, and they're so just kind of like a spray paint cans up there. Just they don't know what's going on. They ain't been clicked in. They ain't been locked in. They ain't got no type of process in them, and they're just kind of just like out there, right? We need to draw that in, and we need to dial that in. We need to dial these dogs in. That's all we need to do to them. But thank you guys a lot for coming in for this video. Thanks you guys for getting in the community and taking the vote. The Facebook group is doing pretty good. So the coon hunting, hound training and tips Facebook group, that's starting to take off a little bit. I really like that. We're doing a lot of good things. Get down there and check out the shops. I got merch down there below now, and that thanks button over there, that would be greatly appreciated if you guys wanted to throw a little bit of cash that way on them comments and things like that. But keep them treated, guys.